What if everything you thought you knew about inclusion was wrong? What if the biggest barriers weren't policies but people? And what if one of those people was you? They say inclusion is a box you tick. I say it's a mirror you hold up. And sometimes the reflection isn't easy to look at. In season 1 of The Organisational Inclusionist, we sat in those uncomfortable spaces together. We heard stories that changed how we see leadership, equity, and each other. Season 2 is not about repeating the same conversations. It's about going deeper. It's about asking the questions polite company avoids. Pulling back the curtain, not just on the boardroom, but on the biases we carry home with us, the policies we never question, and the silences that keep us safe, but not free. This season, you'll hear voices that challenge you, moments that move you, and strategies you can actually use. And I won't pretend to have all the answers, because I'm still learning too. But I promise you this, every conversation will be honest, human, and rooted in the belief that inclusion is not a side project, it's the work. My name is Grace Mosuro, and I am your host. Welcome to season 2 of The Organisational Inclusionist.
So when you're drowning in debt, the numbers aren't the hardest part. It's the shame, it's the silence, it's the crushing sense that the system was never built for you in the first place. For more than 20 years, Muna Yassin has been working to change that. She's the CEO of Rooted Finance, a London-based charity providing one-to-one debt advice to diverse ethnic communities, helping people navigate financial distress, multiple debts, and the heavy emotional toll that comes with them. Muna has served on the government's VCSE Advisory Panel. She's been awarded an MBE for her charitable work during the pandemic and held leadership roles with organisations like Toynbee Hall and Women Advancing Microfinance UK. Muna joins me today on The Organisational Inclusionist for a conversation that will take us into the human side of finance, why trust and dignity are non-negotiable, how debt can strip away identity, and why true economic empowerment must be rooted in community. Thank you so much for joining me today, Muna, for a conversation that I know is going to be really, really insightful.
My pleasure.
Wicked. So before we get stuck in, I would love it. I know I've just given you a brief intro, but I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and your work to our listeners.
Yeah, lovely to be here, Grace. And so, I'm Muna. I'm the CEO of Rooted Finance. We are a community-embedded grassroots debt advice and financial inclusion charity. As you stated, I've been in this business for over 20 years. Started off as a debt advisor and now the CEO of the charity. So really have seen the debt landscape change significantly, but I've also seen the challenges facing our communities really deepen and become much more entrenched, unfortunately. Served on the board at Toynbee Hall. I've now just joined the board at MAL, which is the Money Advice Liaison Group, which really brings together the creditor side and the advice side. So I'm really excited to be contributing there as well. I think for us at Rooted, we recognise that actually there are structural imbalances that mean people from a low financial resilience and people from minority ethnic backgrounds are more susceptible to problem debt and are more susceptible to be longer in debt than other parts of the population. So a lot of our work is around how do we support people in a crisis, but also how do we work with them to think about their long-term financial aspirations. How do we ensure that their financial resilience is increased? And we recognise that's not just working with the individual. There are systemic issues, and a lot of our work over the last few years has been how do we change that system that we are all navigating as an organisation, but also as individuals that are in financial difficulty.
Amazing. So what first drew you to this work? Was there a moment or an experience that made financial inclusion personal for you?
So it's really interesting. I stumbled into this area. You come out of university, I saw a job for a debt advisor and I was like, that sounds interesting, it will do. Not realising actually it was a gateway into some of the things that are really important to me and my values. The kind of work that we do and what financial inclusion, when it's done well, is meant to do is provide a kind of economic justice and social justice type of support. It's really championing people that are voiceless. It's providing dignity and respect back into people's lives and really helping them not just survive but thrive. And all of those things are really important to me. So it was not a conscious decision, but I think what really made it personal for me and made me think, actually, this is not just aligned with my values, but this is personal, was as we were delivering advice and we were starting to work. So we started delivering in East London, and the majority of our clients looked and sounded like me.
Yeah.
And had the same backgrounds as my wider extended family and my friend groups. And I was like, why is this? Why are we the predominant kind of group that need this support?
Mm.
And then I thought to myself, maybe it's just an East London thing, maybe it's just the demographics. And the more I kind of dug into that, and the more I looked at the stats, the more I realized actually it's not an anomaly, and it's, regardless of where you are more likely to be in debt or in poverty if you are from a minority ethnic background.
No, absolutely. It's so funny as well, because I definitely fell into the work that I do now as well. But I feel like sometimes life has a way of kind of pulling you into the space that you're meant to be, right? And directing you into your purpose. So that really resonates, actually, is that piece around actually just falling into it and then being like, actually, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. So thank you for that. So you've stayed in this space for over 2 decades. What has kept you rooted through the challenges? Because we know it's not easy. How have you stayed rooted?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning 2 decades. That makes me feel really, really young.
I'm there with you, so honestly.
So I think it's a really good question, because I think there are times where you think, am I actually making an impact? Am I the right person to be doing this work? And it's heavy work, right? So we're dealing with people who are in serious financial crisis, who have very complex needs. I think the socioeconomic environment and context has got worse. So when we first started delivering advice, it was more around irresponsible lending. A cost of living crisis. People could afford to eat, could afford to have heating in their homes, and we were more dealing with a industry that had lent money irresponsibly. We were in that kind of bling bling area prior to the crash. Credit was prevalent everywhere, and people were just signing up for credit cards and loans without really thinking about the implications and without the checks and balances happening from the creditor side. So a lot of that work was done post the crash, the economic crash, and the banking crisis. And then we started to see austerity come in. And then we went into a pandemic, and then we've had a never-ending cost of living crisis. So I think seeing all of the evolution and that the individual as part of that process has been kind of like a ship without any sails, right? Just buffeted along, and just seeing how that has impacted our communities has been really something that has been part of my reason for staying, because the situation's getting worse and we're needed more than ever, but also thinking about this isn't just an individual thing. It's not about people having to learn to budget their money better. It's about you took out too much money and you didn't think about the consequences. There are structural imbalances and systemic biases that are always going to be there unless somebody challenges that. And so our work has shifted over the last, I would say, 6 to 7 years, really challenging and asking those big questions of the sector, of our kind of decision makers. Well, what kind of economic system do we want? Do we want to continue to have people who are always discriminated against financially? Or do we want to have a society where people are able to thrive? And I think you can see from where we are, some of the divisions that are happening in our country at the moment, some of the rhetoric that's used to stoke up those divisions, and then some of the arguments that are used to kind of dismiss them and say they have legitimate concerns. And there are some legitimate concerns. People are financially struggling, but it doesn't mean that you go out and you start to blame your neighbour for the reasons why you're financially struggling. You look at the kind of broader issues. So I think the thing for me that's kept me going is effectively the work just becomes more complex. And I'm one of those people that if you tell me I can't do something, I want to do it more.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's an interesting one as well, because I remember so my parents were immigrants to the country. I was an immigrant as well, but basically my parents had no financial literacy when it came to how finances work in the UK. And I therefore didn't get any of that education myself at home. And I remember my parents never had credit cards though. And well, my dad did later, but my mum was dead against them. And I remember getting my first credit card. Bearing in mind, I had no financial literacy whatsoever at my freshers fair at university. Visa was there, and I remember them having this really cute store. They had these popcorn makers that they were giving away for free. It was so enticing. And they were like, fill out this form now, you'll get it. I had no business getting a credit card at the age of 18 years old with no financial competency or literacy whatsoever. I didn't have any credit history, so I don't even know how that works, because nowadays they're doing credit checks, right? I think there's the piece around just, that financial literacy piece, and how do we protect youth in particular from getting into those situations, because obviously the institutions aren't necessarily that bothered, right? And I find that minoritized youth are traditionally disproportionately affected by those types of initiatives at freshers' fairs, because they don't have that education. Whereas, kind of children from the dominant group in the UK will have had that education at home, and they might already start uni with mum or dad's credit card, right? So they don't necessarily need that. I think there's some protection that needs to happen in that space as well. Is that something that is still happening from your experience?
Absolutely. So I think you just hit the nail on the head. You have got multi-layered issues. You've got a sector that is purporting to provide education, but actually, what's the motivation behind it? So there are good actors, and there's been lots of work around cleaning up the sector. They are businesses, right? Ultimately, they are businesses, and they want your custom.
Yeah.
If, as my mum always says, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. And so that experience that you just described around people from minority ethnic backgrounds who don't have generational wealth, so therefore the financial education that comes with how to manage money and assets and navigate the financial system is probably lacking. I think it's changing for our generation and their offspring, but actually for you and I, when we were growing up, that probably wasn't available. Unfortunately, it's still not available for lots of young people from our backgrounds, because their parents' experience of money has been survival. Haven't been thriving. It's been, how do you rob Peter to pay Paul? How do you ensure that the bailiffs aren't at your door? How do you ensure that you keep your money lasting towards the end of the month? How do you borrow? It's a scarcity mindset. And shifting that, I think, is happening amongst our youth. But I also think the systems that are in place need to catch up.
Definitely.
And we need to be able to look at us as an asset-based and a strength-based approach, as opposed to, oh, they don't have any disposable income, or they're unlikely to have disposable income. So what's the point of even engaging with them, because they're not going to be a customer base? Or if they are approaching you, it's, we can make some money off you making the wrong decisions, and it's a completely different approach. So I definitely think there are some good organizations doing work with young people. I think there are definitely organizations that recognize that there has to be equity and racial justice at the heart of some of the programs that they're delivering, and how money is very different and has different cultural norms and different cultural backgrounds, and people's perspectives are very different to your typical 2 up, 2 down British household.
Yeah.
And how do you design for that? So a lot of the work that we're doing is around how you bring lived experience, not in an extractive way. So lived experience, because we have to look at where we are now, and then we have to look at where we want to be in 5, 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Where we are now is we have lots of communities that are struggling financially. So we need to have some of those quick wins around how do we ensure that the financial services sector can design products that meet their current needs. So co-production, lived experience have to be at the heart of that process.
Yeah.
But then where do we want to be in 5, 10 years' time, right? So we don't want a sector that's constantly reaching out and saying, can we have some lived experience from a community organization or touching base with the community when they need something. We want a financial services system that actually looks and sounds like us and represents us, and not just at the frontline level. So we know there's a massive leadership deficit. And so I don't believe that we are really going to address the issues fundamentally and at their root until we reach that point. And have programs that mitigate against some of the things that are corrosive to our communities at the moment. But I think until we make those fundamental changes, you are just trimming around the edges.
No, definitely. Definitely. So in the work that you're doing at Rooted Finance, is there a story that really stands out for you about just, your why and the impact that you're having or have had on someone's life and what that taught you?
Yeah, there's many. And I think it helps to contextualize what debt advice does. Debt advice is not recommending products and services. It's really somebody who's at the point of potential eviction or has a bailiff at the door, really coming to you when they're very vulnerable. And then what we do is we will do an emergency assessment to look at, do they have any emergencies, for example, like a bailiff, imminent court date, etc. We will do the end-to-end debt advice process. So that's really setting up a budget, thinking about who they need to pay first, the kind of prioritization process, and then thinking about what next. How do we build your income? How do we maximize your income? And how do we work with you on a budget that provides a way out of debt, but also starts to think about how you reduce your expenditure and you're able to maximize your income and you're
amazing
resilience. So that kind of gives you an idea of the process. One of the clients that really stood out to me, and this client was very vulnerable. She had been through a domestic violence process and was living in a women's hostel. And her ex-partner had managed to gain custody of her only son. So she was really vulnerable. She was trying to gain access to her son, but because she was in a hostel and she was deemed not having appropriate accommodation, that was really difficult. When we dug into why she was not being prioritized to be rehoused, we realized that her former property, her husband had racked up a whole bunch of debts, and there was nearly £10,000 worth of outstanding rent arrears that were in her name, and kind of made her the main tenant. We were able to unpick all of that, because if you think about, there are housing issues, there are mental health issues, there is domestic violence issue, there is an income, all of these things. So my team were able to kind of unpick everything, speak to the local authority, write off the rent arrears, get her rehoused. We're able to rebate a whole bunch of disability benefits that she was entitled to that she didn't realise. At that point, it was during COVID when we were distributing cash grants, financial grants to people that were in financial difficulty. So we were able to issue her with £1,000 to furnish her new home. And then within 3 months, it was a different person that had come through our doors. And then 6 months later, she contacted us to say, I've just started a part-time job. the lawyer that you contacted me with through, I've managed to gain access to my son and I get weekend visitation rights. You have transformed my life. And I think that's what good debt advice can do. It can transform somebody's life. She was completely set up. And now she's moving on with her life. And I think that's what we aim to do. We want to take away all the blockages, allow people to see through the crisis that they're currently in, and then move on with their lives.
I love that. Is that, it just feels like you're holding people's hands. Like life is always lifing, right? And especially if you're someone who's isolated, you're vulnerable, and you maybe don't have that education. It's just having an organization like yours to hold someone's hand and say, like, I've got you, you're not in this alone. We're going to get through this together. And then actually following that up and doing it with them it's amazing. So just thank you for that. Because I know when I was younger, there were times where we had bailiffs at the door and my mum would have benefited from rooted finances support because it was hard. It was hard. So I know personally the impact that type of support can have on just mental health and well-being, especially. What do you wish more people understood about how debt and finance stress really affects minoritized communities?
Yeah, I think I would say problem debt, because we all carry debt, right? So I think understanding what is manageable debt and what problem debt is a key distinction.
Yeah.
And the moment it becomes problem debt is you get that gnawing feeling like I'm not heading to a good place here, and you can't concentrate on other things, so it affects your bandwidth. And once you get to that point, I would definitely say seek advice, right? So if you're not sleeping well, if you're juggling money, and you are at that point where you know you are headed down a road where you're not going to be able to pay these bills, it's always better to seek advice first and as early as possible. Now, that's really easy to say when it's not affecting you, right? Because the natural human inclination is to bury your head in the sand, hope for something to come along, and it will get better next month, or you think you're going to be able to increase your income. And I would say that even if you're at a really bad stage, don't think it's undoable. Is that even a word? Don't think that it's not retractable, right? So everything can be worked through. So I would say that it probably impacts. So you've got the chicken and egg thing around mental health, and I think it affects people's mental health significantly. It affects people's life chances significantly. But I think the distinction around minority communities is that we know that from our data and partners that we're working with, that if they become in debt, they are more likely to be have enforcement action taken earlier, more likely to be sanctioned for their benefits earlier. And these all have financial penalties. So what you're doing is you're compounding their debt with more debt through actions that happen within the debt management and the debt enforcement sector. And we also know that they probably paid more for their loan or what piece of credit in the first place. So we know that there is the ethnicity premium. People are being charged more for their car insurance based on their ethnicity. So there are a whole bunch of structural imbalances that probably mean that they carry more debt. And then when they're in debt, they're probably penalized more, which has financial implications, which therefore means that they are starting from a much further back position than the rest of the population, which therefore means that they're going to be longer in debt. When you're in debt, the more it affects your mental health, your physical health, your life chances. So there are layer upon layer of things that make debt much more problematic for minority communities. And I think debt is a problem for anybody who's in significant debt problems, but it's not a level playing field is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's mad as well because my mom had she had a stroke in her early 40s and it was finance related. Like she was doing it all by herself. She had 3 kids to feed and house. She was really struggling. And I just remember just, being in the hospital with her because they had to put her in a coma. And it was crazy. And everyone's like, but she's only in her 40s. But my mom was carrying so much by herself. So yeah, I think just having that appreciation and understanding on how it impacts, how stress can really affect minoritized communities, even down to potentially losing their life, I think is so, so important and really just emphasizes how important the work that you're doing is as well. So you've worked with government, you've received an MBE, and still remain deeply community focused. How do you balance that recognition with responsibility?
So first of all, it was a bolt from the blue in terms of the MBE, and I think for me it was something that I slightly struggled with because obviously the connotations.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more around this isn't for me. This is for Rooted, and this is for all the people that we support. And what else can it do to bring an opportunity for us to raise our clients' stories and their voices and bring them to the table? And I think that's how I look at any recognition, potential to be at a table that people that sound and look like us aren't normally invited to. It's a immense responsibility. And I think that's the other thing in terms of people who are in their professions and who are leading some of the work that you do, Grace, right? And some of the other people that are in our networks and who are championing equity, justice, and diversity, but also are really working to change systems from within and from outside. There is a responsibility to think about what would the ancestors say, is what I ask myself. Like literally, every time I walk into a room, and also what would my parents say, right? And I was very lucky that I grew up with a mum and a dad who were very, social justice was at the heart of everything they did. So I ended up going to protests and being part of campaigns to support people, make changes from a very early age. And I look back to the grown-ups that I grew up around and the people, and they faced a lot more discrimination than we do, and the challenges that they had. So if I have a bad day or if I think, oh, I'm not making any effect, I just think back to, hold on a minute, what did our ancestors do and our kind of parents' generation to get to where we are now? And this is easy in comparison to what they did, and there are still to be done. So I guess I never forget where I came from. And
No, I love that. I love that. And I love like how humble you are with the MBE, because I know some people, once they get the title, they kind of move more into kind of public facing. Let me get a book out there. Let me, get some deals and endorsements and whatever. But you've stayed really focused on the grassroots of what you're doing and being in the cold face. And I absolutely love that. And it really speaks to the fact that that MBE was about rooted finance for you and really driving that work forward. If you could reimagine the financial system for equity and well-being, where would you start?
Gosh, how long have you got? I think the key thing is it all comes back down to, if we don't have people, and I get people don't like the word representation, because like representation without power, absolutely. The representation comes from having people in key decision-making positions. So unless you've got people who are defining what risk means, who are in the C-suite, who are on the board, who are in the regulator, who are in the kind of monetary policy committee, who are in the treasury, unless you have people who have that lived experience and who have that connection to communities that are actually underserved, understood, and probably have always had things done to them and not with them, you will never see the change in the financial services sector or the kind of economic world that we want. And number one is building wealth, right? So if we continue to just think that minority communities are happy to just float around and live through life without owning anything, and without having anything to pass down to their children, and without having aspirations around what they can do with that ownership and the control that brings. So I think I want to see a economy that is much more representative, much more inclusive, has community wealth building at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And also recognizes that we have discriminatory practices that are prevalent. We have an ethnicity pay gap. We have ethnicity premiums left, right, and center. And until we recognize those and we start accepting and acknowledging they exist, then work together, because we can't do it on our own. So it has to be
exactly. No, I completely agree. So as we prepare to close, for women who see themselves in you, what's one truth you want them to hold on to?
So it's so weird because, like, I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I think as you get older, you start getting more reflective. Things that when I started my career, and it still happens. I walk into rooms where I could be the only woman, I could be the only woman of color, I could be the only Muslim, I could be so many different things where you feel like you're actually very different to where decisions are made.
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, I think that affected me to the point where it affected me not to enter the rooms, but it affected me once I left the rooms. Like, is this what I really want to do? Am I going to continue just continue to try and educate people? And that's tiring, right? It's so tiring.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to anyone who is in that position is to understand yourself, really understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, nobody can shake your belief in yourself, and recognize that you are not just enough, you are probably overqualified and over-informed, and you should stand in that, and you should be unapologetic. And you will come across tropes like you are aggressive, you are too assertive, you are difficult to work with. Use those as a badge of honor, right? Because what I would say is that effectively that is a compliment. It's a backhanded compliment that you are asking the right questions, you're standing in your truth, and find a network. Find a tribe that you can have a safe space with, you can be yourself, you can get the care and support that you need, but continue to be able to do what you do. And you need that self-support structure. And I'm very lucky that I have some great women that are around me. And sometimes we just meet, eat, and just talk through some of the challenges that we're facing.
It's so important. It really, really is. And I think that, I don't know, growing up, it wasn't something that was pushed. I think there was this view that, I don't know, that we were all competition. But now in my 40s, I'm like, actually, I need these women. Women are my sounding board. They're my cheerleaders. They are examples of what greatness looks like. And I think it's so important that we actually have that representation in our own circles so we can see what's possible and be guided by their lived experience as well. Muna, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. It's given me some time to reflect, and also just obviously to learn from you and the great work that you're doing. To our listeners, Muna's story is a reminder that financial inclusion isn't just policy, it's deeply personal. It's about restoring dignity, building trust, and creating systems that see us, support us, and believe in our potential. If this conversation moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. We're building a community of listeners who believe in action rooted in empathy. Thank you for tuning in to the Organisational Inclusionist today. Until next time, stay rooted, stay brave, and stay in the conversation. Muna, how can people connect with you?
You can find us at our website, rootedfinance.org.uk. You can find me on LinkedIn, and that's as far as I go with socials.
Oh, I'm impressed. I need to reduce my social media content. It's wild. But thank you so much again, Muna. This is a really important conversation, so I'm hoping our listeners take a lot from it and get in touch with you if they find themselves in need of the support that Rooted Finance provide.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
If you've listened this far, you already know. Inclusion isn't a statement on a website. It's the choices we make every day in rooms where no one's watching. Season 2 of the Organisational Inclusionist is my invitation to you to listen harder, to act braver, to see the person in front of you fully, and to be willing to change because of it. We're not here to tick boxes. We're here to rewrite the way organisations think, feel, and treat people. Because when inclusion becomes the culture, not the initiative, everyone rises.